session ran over a little bit, and I'm Rob Montgomery, the founder of the Smart Film School, and in this session, I'm going to probably go into professor mode because they gave me 60 minutes. Sometimes I only get 10 minutes to talk about this, and I can only talk about perhaps one aspect of what is really a new language. And today I'm excited because I can talk about a little bit more about how mobile storytelling is challenging us as storytellers and journalists. So, I like to move around. If I make anyone nervous or if I'm talking too fast, you can give me a signal like this. Slow down. If I'm talking too slow, you can give me a signal, okay? These are like television cues from broadcast. Okay, so I said mobile storytelling is a new language. Maybe I'll just talk here. It's probably going to pick up my voice a little better. Okay, so that's over there now, Leo. Thank you very much. Let's just look at something. If I'm any good at this, you won't be looking down at your screen. You won't be distracted by your phone. Your eyes are going to be glued to the screen over here because I like to think myself as a pretty good visual storyteller. And when we think about storytelling, and particularly with mobile, what are the roots of some of this new language? Comes from seeds that have grown in the past. Seeds like the MSNBC Spectral Visual Newsreader. Does anybody remember this project? It's been around for, gosh, almost 10 years. It's telling stories in cards, the concept of story cards. So that's one of the seeds of this new language that kind of build our visual grammar, our storytelling grammar, set some of the rules. We now see that concept taking hold in the mobile storytelling experience with things like Google Now. Now, whenever you search on Google on your phone, you're going to get relevant contextual information, like maybe the weather in Berlin or that flight you're taking. Yeah, show up in story cards. Just the information you need at the moment you need it, served up in a very comprehensive snapshot or a snack. So it's an information snack, a news snack. So these story cards are really the core ingredients, the core nouns and verbs that we use in mobile storytelling. And oftentimes, because phones have gotten bigger, the displays have gotten larger, the natural default is to hold the screen vertically. That's challenging our presentation. It's challenging the way we're doing video. But again, it also allows for story cards to flow in streams, yeah? So what are some of the elements of this language? You know, stories have to be swipeable, shareable, streamable, and this is really important, very visually led. Because we are now serving stories to audiences in a world, an ocean of small screens, visual storytelling is particularly effective and particularly important to grow your literacy for. Small example of this. Has anybody used the Circa app or know what Circa is? Okay, a few hands there. So a story broke in Washington. A drone landed at the White House grounds. Scared everyone, right? Especially the Secret Service. So how was that story served up using the Circa app? Well, through a series of cards. So through text, but each paragraph has to be, self-contained and work in a stream. It's told through photos and also graphics and also collections of sources and other information, other links, and a collection of quotes, sound bites. Those are very visually presented. So that's a great example of a recent story told. But that's often just not enough because to really get that engagement, you want to invite your news consumer, your story consumer, to be able to subscribe to any new story cards that you add. On a developing story like this, they can stay with your story. They can get notifications. They're in charge of how they get the new story cards that are coming in that stream. So what we're seeing now with apps like Circa, really, why are they the only ones that are doing this? Really, this should be a feature for every news publisher, I would think right now, and every media house, that this novelty will wear off, this will become a new habit, a new standard. But it will challenge a lot of the technical ways that we organize stories, and it challenges our storytelling literacy as professional storytellers as well, because we have to write in story cards, we have to think visually, we have to consider the stream. And that's what it really means to be mobile first. When you look at Circa, the reason they're able to do what they're able to do is because they're not coming from a legacy media outlet. They're not a traditional broadcaster, they're not a newspaper that went online, tried to port their online content to mobile, whatever, just trying to put band-aids in responsive design. They're really just built from the ground up on this idea of atomized content, visually led story cards, and subscriptions to stories so that readers can get updates. You can take that concept a little bit further or look at it a little bit differently when you look at the Zeit mobile storytelling app. This is, again, a consumer-focused app that you can seed with what you're interested in, and it will build a custom report for you every day, or every time you check it, it will go out and find interesting stuff. But this app gets smarter the more you use it. And that is a behavior, again, that should be a standard for any news organization going or saying they're going to be mobile first. Because that storytelling experience, that is an extremely satisfying user experience for consumers, because you get turned on to more interesting content. It already kind of knows what you like, but behind the scenes, it's seeing what stories you're reading, how much time you're spending on it, what sources are they, and it gives you more similar information. It's really using algorithms and machine learning to improve mobile storytelling. Everybody knows what this is? Do you have it on your phone? Do you have the Snapchat on your phone? If you did, do you know what that is? That's my QR code. All those dots, they're not random, they're unique to me. If you held up the Snapchat app and you touched the screen and pointed it at this, it would add me to your, yeah? Did you know that? That's a cool little hack. So we're seeing some of these older technologies come to us in new and different ways. QR codes are 10 years old. They're really popular in Asia. They didn't take on very, in many other parts of the world, but they're coming back as a way to connect users to each other and to their mobile stories that they're making in Snapchat. Now, I must admit, I'm always lost in the Snapchat user experience. I mean, I think it's designed by kids for kids to keep parents away, you know? It's really confusing, and it works brilliantly at that. But I do know that if you swipe right, you can get to content. This is new. This came out this year. Partnerships. Because the audience is so huge on Snapchat, because it's the one that brands want to be in front of, all of these publishers ran into this to put their content where the audience is gathering. And that's just the way it works on mobile. You can't necessarily attract an audience to your content. You kind of have to put your content where the audience is. So mobile platforms are super important for storytelling. And if you look at how those news brands are promoting their content to millennials, using a vertical display of information, CNN probably does it the best because they actually understand the language of mobile storytelling, they actually understand art direction, and created a design language for their stories that they're promoting on Snapchat. If you go and look at, I'm just going to back up, if you look at some of the other ones, they're not so good at it. Vice News sucks on this platform, in my opinion, because they're using full screen vomit-inducing video. Okay, maybe that works for their audience, but it doesn't work. It doesn't attract me. So their short promos are all full screen video, and it's really unwatchable. Of course, when you click on any story, it's going to prompt you to turn the device and watch a video horizontally, as you should. But CNN tries to make any motion or animation in their vertical presentation of news very small, so it's not full screen, and so it's a pleasant experience. It's almost like poster design, but some parts of the poster are moving. Very key, very nuanced thing, but very, very important if you're going to be professional and put that out there. And the reason I know that was because I had observed this behavior. I worked for a long time as an art director in Chicago, and so these are cues that I picked up on, and I reached out and I found the CNN creative director in Atlanta for digital confirmed that, yeah, we've developed a language for this. Thanks for noticing. So as we look at mobile storytelling, we really have to look at it as its own ecosystem, its own world. We can't just do what we've always done and push it out to mobile and expect to be successful. We have to adapt. We have to really reinvent ourselves. So this is my quote. You can quote me on that. So that's the real challenge. We have to build our mobile storytelling and our mobile consuming experiences pretty much from the ground up. And platforms are a good way to do that. So let's talk a little bit about the news of now, right? This is the latest breaking news in mobile storytelling. Everyone remember this? Oh, that's old news. This is the new thing. That was Meerkat. This is Periscope. I've got it right here. I've done some periscopes from Perugia. I wasn't getting a good signal. Let me see if I'm getting one now. But there's a big, I'm going to use this mic, Leo. Mike, hello, I'm over here, thanks. There's a live stream camera in the back of the room. It's really big, and it has to be connected to cables and everything. And up the hill, there's satellite trucks connected to big TV cameras and all that stuff. But here, I don't have any of that stuff. So where am I broadcasting from? Perugia. So now, I can share this. To everyone who's following me on Twitter. And as many people that can follow that stream can now follow this lecture and see, hi everyone, we're talking about mobile storytelling. So that's Periscope, and that is owned by Twitter. That's what is basically taking over what Meerkat had started at South by Southwest. Unfortunately, it is that vertical video vomit-inducing experience. That's what you see in a lot of the streams, people taking their phone, walking down the streets, probably of Perugia, and it's really jerky and really unwatchable for a long time, unless you really, really have something inciting in front of the lens. I'm going to switch back to this mic, Leo. So what I've started to do is like, okay, use my art, put on my art direction hat and say, look, how can we hack this? What is the language here? What is the visual language when we're looking at vertical video? And there are some cues, interestingly enough, with what Snapchat was doing with some of their original video programming, literally can't even. I've heard the content of this show is awful, but the way that they were subdividing that vertical experience to create a more natural viewing experience for video is kind of interesting. I mean, why is vertical video bad, right? It's not always bad, it's just most of the times bad because it's being done by amateurs. And it's also the fact that it's a very narrow portal. Vertical motion is very tough to process because of the biology of the way we're built. Our eyes are spaced horizontally on our head. That's our field of vision. We're built for pattern recognition and motion. We can process more naturally and more calmly when it's in a horizontal frame. That's why movie theaters use an extreme horizontal aspect ratio, because it's a very immersive. It matches the way we look at the world. So here's another way. So taking that idea of dividing the screen, I did some Meerkats. This was before Periscope came out. I was doing just some testing. I was like, what if I subdivided the screen and then I made the screen interactive in the lower half of the frame? There's no audio on this. It's just I muted the audio. But you can see, you can have a talking head and you can have a second screen below that amplifies what they're doing. You have another person or producer controlling that screen. This was just a keynote I made, and I just threw it on there, and I just touched the screen manually. I just reached around. So that's a DIY hack that anyone can do. If you have an extra iPad, there's just an iPad mini and a smartphone. So here's what it looks like. I just rigged it up in my studio. It took maybe 10 minutes, and I'm able to give a lecture or a guitar lesson. I could sit there and play my guitar, and I could have the music flow underneath with the chords, and I could give a guitar lesson. So I think, vertical video can be pretty effective. We just have to be really smart about how we're using that full screen. I said vertical video isn't always bad. It just most of the time is. Here's an example of reducing the motion. The camera the phone is locked down on a tripod. It's a very vertical subject. This is the TV tower in Berlin. Can everyone see this? and the motion is light. The motion, if you look at it, there's little clouds floating above the top, just in a very few pixels. So motion can work, but it has to be the right kind of motion to be a pleasant viewing experience. So 15, 20 seconds of that, okay, that's a nice, original, unique kind of piece of video. Might work well in vertical. Here's another example, a shot recently for Periscope, letting events unfold in front of the camera. Again, I made the phone stable. I didn't have my tripod with me, but I just held it on the bridge and let a boat come through. And by the way, you know, when I was figuring out how am I going to show this in a presentation that is horizontal video, that's what you're all seeing here, how am I going to show vertical video? And broadcasters often have this problem too. And I came up with this, what's called a key graphic. You know, the slide template, if you will, has the phone. So now I'm able to put in context what that vertical video is, and I can have contextual information over to the side. You know, if it was a piece of news video, breaking news video that maybe we got from user, generated content or eyewitnesses at the scene, by the way, that's going to be a huge thing that's going to be happening now. The next cop killing in America, I hate to say the next, but you know it's going to happen. The next one that'll probably make big news might be just featured on a live stream. And that sounds really awful to say, but it's probably going to happen just because it's going to get out there. And now you as a media house, how are you going to display that? Well, maybe you have to put it out there, and then maybe you put the subtitles, what people are saying over there, because the audio is often really bad on a smartphone unless you attach an external microphone. So that's just one tip for you if you're going to be thinking about how you're going to display vertical video. And if you are going to have motion, try and make it smooth, try and make it interesting. Yeah. If you're going to do it, if you're going to do that kind of stuff, you might need to invent a bicycle cam, which is what I did. So I could experiment with smooth motion, because when you're on a bicycle, you're on a pneumatic tire. You get a smooth experience. And there I was on a tarmac, a very big runway. So, and I could have hands-free filming. I had a mic down there, so I could monologue. I could narrate what was happening. Very simple hack. But it doesn't always have to be vertical video. So this is a mock-up I made when I was talking with developers. I was like, look at Meerkat. You know, Meerkat has that vertical video full bleed as the default. And, you know, they have the overlays for the comment stream and icons of all the people following. But it doesn't have to be that way. Why not either make it square or vertical and let the vertical display of information be contextual, right? And you can intuitively guide a user to, excuse me, I think it's a video that's going to play, right? I might have to click on it.
Default is you just rotate.
Anyways, you can guide the user to prompt them to turn it to a horizontal. Oh, it is playing.
There, you've got to make it frictionless and guide the user to film horizontal video.
Okay, it didn't show. Sorry, we'll just move on. Technical problems. What, technical problems? Never heard of it. Let's see if I could just manually bypass that slide. Where's my screen? There we are. So the real question with all of this is story cards, video storytelling. So the real challenge I have to you as maybe professional journalists, as student journalists, is can you tell a story in 30 seconds? Can you make a compelling report? Can you give me a self-contained story module, a piece of a story that can go into a stream, be episodic in nature, that can inform, entertain, and keep people not only attracted to that story, but informed? And you can do that now within Twitter. You can, again, it's going to ask you to hold your phone vertically, but it's going to record square video a la Instagram, yeah? And you can film pieces, segments, sound bites, pieces to camera, voiceover, and you can trim them, and you can assemble, edit it right within Twitter. And you, up to 30 seconds, you can post it. And that's not live streaming, but that's near live streaming. And maybe you can have a little bit more story craft because you're actually trying to put together a story that has a beginning, middle, and end in a 30-second window. Now, it's not limited. That's not the only way that you can push a 30-second video out on Twitter. You can still use the traditional tools, I call them traditional tools now, of video camera or camera app and video editor app, again, iMovie, and you can cut together a 16:9 widescreen so that it plays full screen playback, edit that to a 30-second package. You can put graphics over it, you can do voiceovers, you can do split edits, you can cutaways. Do it in 30 seconds. You can tweet that out as a piece of video. If you want to see an example of that, I did that earlier this morning. My Twitter handle is @RobMontgomery, 2 B's. And you can see I posed that question to people to see if they might want to come to this session. Can you tell a story in 30 seconds? That's one thing I've been challenging myself to do and something I've been challenging my students to do. So you can do a 30-second weather report. That was one of my first live fire exercises. I was apparently one of the first people in the world to get this feature, and everyone else had to wait like 2 weeks, the video Twitter feature. I think it's because I was in the German Apple Store instead of the US Apple Store, but a lot of people were, all my colleagues, all my peers at the BBC and other newsrooms, they're like, why don't we have it yet? I don't know. It's up to Twitter. But everyone has it now. So you can see I like to do a lot of experiments. I like to see where things break. I like to find out where those edges are and see how that's going to define my storytelling. So I did a story recently on the 25th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. Yeah? And I challenged myself just to be a solo producer, a solo journalist. And this time I used the iPad, and I had one subject, one story to tell. And I filmed over 2 days this story. And of course, yes, I used my bicycle as a cam to give nice filmmaking kind of tracking shots. And I put all the video pieces together in 30-second bites into a stream. And you can see a little bit of how it looks here. Again, it's a vertical streaming media experience. Each piece of visual reporting, whether it's a still image or a video, is then the words are then written to the pictures rather than writing your story and then going out and filming it. So it is the inverse storytelling model that you find often in broadcast or in documentary filmmaking. You don't know what your story is until you visually report it. That's key to the literacy of mobile storytelling language we're talking about. So you can see that there. You can see it on your own phone or on your own laptop, a larger mobile device, if you just follow that link there, bit.ly.com/Berlin-thing. And it will get you to a thing link that has hotspots, and one of the hotspots will take you to that multimedia report, which was done in the Storehouse app. Has anybody heard of Storehouse or used Storehouse? Do you like it? It's pretty phenomenal. You want to do something like snowfall, and you don't want to have to work with a developer or a designer, because you don't have to. There's no coding. It's extremely intuitive, and it's a lot of fun. But it will challenge you to tell stories visually first. And then you can, take a snapshot of that. You can make a story card of that, post it out on Twitter, and invite your audience in that way. So just making the story isn't enough. Try and challenge yourself to make story cards that promote that story and invite people in to share it. Oh, I have that link maybe a little bigger here. Storehouse gives you a little story card to share, and that's pretty cool too, but it doesn't always appear on all social media platforms. But it does have some motion. It has that first piece of video, and so it is kind of an attractive way to visually share a story. So let's talk a little bit now. Let's switch gears. Like I said, I'm in my full professor mode because I got 60 minutes and I've still got 20 left. How do I teach video journalism? How do I teach especially mobile storytelling? Well, one of the things that I often get are calls from like publishers and editors-in-chief saying, hey, we want you to do some consulting or a workshop. We want to train our reporters in video. And my first question is, what kind of video are you going to make? They don't know the answer. They never know the answer. I said, well, is there something similar? That, I don't know, we just want to know how to do video. I'm like, okay, so let me give you a cue. Let's check it off the list here. Are your reporters going to be doing live streams? Okay, that's great. We know a lot about that now. Are you just expecting your reporters to do visual reporting and then send that raw footage back to your media, engine for other people to cut? Are you trying to do short form? Are you trying to do 30-second videos? Are you trying to do news clips? Are you trying to follow the formulas of broadcast news? Are you trying to do a news package, 2-minute package? Are you just doing walkthroughs, show and tells, exact? So once you start figuring out what type of video you want, how you're going to produce it, then we can start and talk about, okay, what are the ingredients in every news report? What are the fundamental building blocks you need? And now we will build our training or our conversation around if you have the capability, do you have the workflows? And these are the things that your reporters need to know how to do. They have to go out there and gather these elements. These 5 things are the keys because that's what video provides. Video is great when you know the language and you have the fluency to tell it because you can communicate a lot of information in a short amount of time. And that is a critical skill right now, a life-changing skill for people who know how to do it because we're living in a world of small screens and short attention spans and an expectation for really concise and powerful storytelling. So a lot of these lessons I'm showing you were built because I did some consulting with Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. Does anybody know those guys? They're a pretty big broadcaster. If you don't know them, they publish in 28 languages, 21 countries. They have 300 journalists in Prague. They have 19 bureaus all across Central Asia with more than 200 journalists, and they have over 900 correspondents worldwide. And they hired me to figure out how can we make their smartphones smarter with what the video they're doing, yeah? So whether that's live streaming or sending back footage from events to their respective bureaus or to the main newsroom, that was the big problem to solve. And of course they were using Android devices at the time, and they still are. And Android devices just don't support full filmmaking video production to the level that iOS devices currently do. So we had some limitations in terms of being able to do fully complete packages. So that changed the question on the workflow. So when you're working with reporters, when you're working with media students, when you're working with media faculty who now have to teach this new language, what are the things you need to really focus on? How to build a visual story, shot patterns and sizes, what's the visual grammar? How do you prepare for interviews is as much as important as how you conduct an interview. Because if you're not properly prepared with your tech, if you're not properly prepared with your questions, you're not going to get what you need in the end, which are great sound bites. They drive your story. And then how do you take those best bites and best pictures and put it into a real powerful report, even if it's a 30-second report. So what I teach is basically 10 steps, We have to understand the technology. We have to get the apps and gear sorted out. We have to understand what types of video we're going to make because those gear decisions are often related to what type of video, what's the expectations for video, and how can we get the best quality, right? So we just go step by step, learning a very complex language, but you can do it. Here's just a quick sample of my current rig. This is what I'm recommending pretty much for any journalist who wants to get professional results. You still have to solve the same problems that you would with any other camera. You've got to lock it down. That means put it on a tripod. You've got to upgrade the audio, which means using an external microphone. And you're often going to have problems of lighting your victims, your interview subjects. Yeah? So how can we do that and keep everything really small, lightweight, and low cost? And then we have to talk about each of those 5 elements, those key elements get subdivided further. Okay, what do sequences do? Why are they so important? Why do I have to do all this extra stuff when I just want to do my interview? Well, you have to train text-oriented reporters that video requires a lot more visual storytelling, and you have to walk them through, okay, these are story tools. These aren't general videos. These are things that you have to include because they also drive your story and they help you move between different sections of your story. So once you explain it, look, what we're talking about is not B-roll. That's just a technical term because, back in the day we had to have two tape machines, an A tape machine and a B tape machine. And when we wanted to switch between interviews and visual stories, the B-roll held all those pictures. So we call it B-roll, but no. So I don't call it B-roll. I don't call it GVs, which is a UK term for general video. I say these are sequences, and I use the language of filmmaking to say, look, you can learn this, and you can introduce new ideas, new subjects, show a process, move between scenes, create tension, relieve tension, setups and payoffs, yeah? And then all those things about interviews. Now, okay, now we have their attention because, oh, it's all about my interview. Well, there's a lot you have to focus on to get great sound bites, and these are just a few. So we work through all of those issues. And then when it comes, now you've got your phone full of video clips. Oh, God, how do I start my story? What do I start with? Well, here's kind of a shortcut for you. If you're struggling in the sea of learning how to make a video, and you've got all these clips on your phone, just come back to this graphic. Start with your best sound bites. Start with your most compelling facts, and build your story from there. It doesn't have to be a story that starts at the beginning of time and ends with the current moment. Start with your best, hit them with your best shot, we say in American English, yeah? Hit them with your best shot, show your best pictures first. Because people are gonna make a decision right away whether they're gonna stay with that story based on what they see in the first few seconds. So you've gotta lead with that. Here's a video story presented in a different way. It's presented much more like a playlist. And this is a mock-up I did when I was doing some app development for Radio Free Europe. We were trying to say, could we develop an app that would let a reporter build a video report without having to open a video editor? Yeah, without having to learn nonlinear editing, without having to open iMovie. And so I came up with a language, a design language that could communicate what is in each part of a video to anyone else in their company. So anyone looking at this list can say, oh, the first thing is WS, that's a wide shot. The next thing is an MS, medium shot. The next thing is SOT. Does anybody know what SOT is? British term, sound on tape. SOTs. You talk to British broadcasters, they're talking about their SOTs. Well, they're talking about their interview responses, the sound bites. CU, close up, SOT. And you can see each of those clips is trimmed to a rough cut, like, okay, that's 4 seconds, then it's 6 seconds of a visual sequence of victims in the street, then it goes to our first sound bite, it's about 15 seconds long. It starts with the first few words, she looked, blah, blah, blah. So all of the cues are there. As an editor, I may not have seen one frame of this video, but I know exactly what that reporter has collected and assembled and sent to me. Yeah? And then I can make a decision, do I want to change the order of that? And that's what we were trying to get to. Because when you can do that, you can start to see a video story in a new way, a way that's not possible when you're just watching video. So you can see we've got an establishing scene, we've got a sequence, we've got witnesses, we've got a cutaway, now we go to the expert voice, and then we have a summary with the reporter at the end. So here's another way to deconstruct video, showing it to you in maybe a form that you're more comfortable with, text. So I've done a lot of that in workshops, and I've done a lot of that in person. But over the last year, I started a year ago writing a book. It was published in March last year called A Field Guide for Mobile Journalism. And this was about how to use your phone to do interactive stories, how to build visual stories. Again, teaching text-oriented reporters and storytellers new ways to use a device they already have without spending any other money than maybe getting a couple apps to tell powerful visual stories and start to make story cards. I've put all that learning now into 10 course packs. I've built 120 video lessons because when I tried to write the follow-up book on video, I wrote it and I realized the best way to present this is in structured video. So I had to make video story cards for each of my lessons. And that way they could be assembled into different courses. So one course might be 45 minutes and might just be, what every reporter needs. Hey, the 10 steps to how to make a video. because, you know, reporters, they're busy and they just want to go to a lesson and find out how to solve that problem or show me that technique again. And they can do that in this platform. Some people might want a more deeper dive and get certified. They want 7 hours. They want 120 lessons. Fine. There's a course for you on that. So building that teaching all over again from scratch took me 6 months, but it's really effective. And people are coming to me, like people at CNN are saying, hey, can you build us a course? We want these lessons. And I say, no problem, because I have built all my lessons as video story cards. I can build a stream, I can build a course for you in a day, based on exactly the story that you want your reporters to know. So that's called the Smart Film School. You can check it out. And those are some of the courses. Some are just focused on interviews, yeah. Some are focused on multimedia. You can design your own course, blah, blah, blah. That's the advertising. Now, so what is this all getting to, right? What is this all getting to? If we're going to start telling stories in cards, we're going to start training reporters to be fluent in new languages that are visually led, that are self-contained, that are short-form focused. It's going to bring challenges to your bigger ideas of how your newsroom is organized, you know? And that's really where I like to come in and work with publishers and media houses and say, look, this is changing everything. Mobile just isn't a bolt-on, just one other channel that you're putting your content out on, right? It's not another edition of your newspaper. It's not another news show you make. It has to be its own entire world. So who's left in the newsroom? Well, I have some ideas about that. That if all of your reporters are now able to do this work and not have to go to a newsroom as often, they're going to go in and check in. Who's left? And that's just some idea. And I got that idea because I actually built this newsroom 3 years ago in Tbilisi. It's the world's first and mobile-only newsroom in the world. It's also serving Radio Free Europe and 4 journalism schools right now. Started out just serving 1 journalism school and Radio Free Europe training. Everything in that newsroom environment is a teaching environment. Everything in that newsroom environment is a classroom, is a broadcast production space. There are no walls. The walls that are there move. There are no computers. Everything's a mobile device. Furniture moves. So the whole space is open. The whole space can be reconfigured into a classroom or into an event space that could be live streamed or into live television production or show production. And the students love it. So when I think about mobile and I think about that experience of blowing up your newsroom and building it all around mobile, I know what I'm talking about because I built one. And it also challenges, you know, when I said there's no computers, there's like, okay, maybe 2 computers, 3 computers that are fixed. And one of those computers is to manage the mobile inventory. I had to build a safe vault in the middle of this building to hold all the mobile gear, cameras, microphones, phones, and iPads, yeah? And when a student reporter needs to check out a piece of gear, they just come in, swipe their student ID on that computer, and the technician sets them up with the gear they need for the job they need to do at the moment they're doing it. Really smart, right? There's a huge vault of toys to play with, and you only need what you need at the moment. So that's the idea. You can learn more about that at the Smart Media Lab. I got one more cool graphic, at least, to show you. And that is what I call the Mojo Pyramid. So if, again, we step back and look at the big picture, and we say, okay, now we're going to have more of our reporters doing mobile field reporting, right? Doing story cards from the field. Not everyone's going to be at the same skill level. Not everyone's going to have the same role or function or expectations for what they can do. So I like to break this down into 3 camps that at the very top are going to be people like doing what I was showing you my examples, like doing the Berlin Wall story, you know? One person that can do everything, right? They can find the story, they can find the interview subjects, they can find the experts, they can report visually, they can cut the package, they can post it in a story card, promote it on social media, right? But those people are very few, fully trained mobile visual journalists. And so they sit at the top of the pyramid, and they're supported at the base by every reporter who has that basic understanding, the 10 ways to tell a story, the 10 steps to building a visual story. Everyone has some degree of fluency, okay? They might be in the international language system, you know, at the A1 level, okay? But if you can get everyone in your organization trained at the A1 level in these concepts of story cards, visual storytelling, short form, streams, self-contained ideas, and I mean train everyone, train the administrators, train the secretaries, train everyone in your building on this, because they all can now be eyewitnesses and be empowered with their smartphone using apps like Periscope, using apps like Twitter to make video, make story cards, and they can contribute to your report. So I say train everyone, generalists, at that. That gives you a huge base to your Mojo pyramid. And then, of course, in the middle are going to be the specialists, people whose jobs it is to do, you know, mobile journalism a lot of the time. They might be a 2-person crew doing live streaming events or things like that. So that's the Mojo pyramid. Again, if you want to look at an example not from me, which is always good, you can look at Klaus Weinmann. Now, he is at Bild. Bild is the largest publisher in Europe, in Germany, and Klaus is a VJ. So he is like a James Bond. He's the guy who will parachute into like a Soma mine disaster in Turkey and come back with this, and it's just him and his camera. So let me see if this will play. And this, again, is a project that was built in Storehouse. So he was using his phone and taking you into the aftermath of the mine disaster, the people, the families, the workers, the rescue attempts, the pain, really. A very painful story. Very, very powerful. So this stuff is not toys. This stuff, if you have the language, the literacy, and you have the organization and the right people doing the right jobs, can be extremely powerful. And it's just heartbreaking stuff, yeah? So yes, real reporters are doing this in real newsrooms. Maybe you've got some questions. Maybe we have some time. I tried to leave some time. I can give you some questions, you know, because this is going to challenge everything. Creating a whole world and a whole experience around mobile is going to change your world. So, you know, what knowledge do the leaders have? This is what I always come back to, because these are the people who are calling me. What knowledge does the editor-in-chief need to have? You can't call it training, because no editor will admit that they need training. Okay, coaching, whatever you want to call it, mentoring. But they need a few minutes on this topic as well, to really understand the potential. And then when it comes to everyone else, it comes down to planning. It's because there's such a wide palette now. I've shown you just a few of the ways to tell a story. It's really going to challenge, what is the best way to tell that story? Is it going to be a live stream? That means I have to deal with vertical video. Is it going to be a series of short video reports? You know, try and pick one and get really good at it before you move on to the next, would be my suggestion. And then try to work with a partner. You know, maybe you swarm a story with a colleague, and one of you is focused on video, and maybe one of you is focused on interactive images, for example, and you pair that reporting, and now you multiply the depth of your storytelling, and you create a nice experience. So, but you're each focusing on one aspect. That can work great. But to get there, you're always going to have to be seeking visual answers to your story questions. So, with that, I am done with my lecture. I'm going to get some water, and then I can take some questions. Steve, you have a question? Who's doing mobile best right now? Well, I showed some examples. I think Circa is doing it best from basically what is a reinvention of the rewrite room. The rewrite desk has existed for at least 100 years. In American newspapers that I knew of, you know, you'd get reports over the telegraph, or you'd phone in a report, you know, outside the police station, and someone back in the newsroom would rewrite it for you. And the rewrite desk is what Circa is. They're doing that well. The people who are doing this from the broadcast world in Ireland, there's a national broadcaster called RTE. They've been training their staff for the last year. They've published broadcast 50 stories so far. That may not sound like a lot, but in the world of television, 50 original news reports it's pretty significant. They're just starting. And you know, they're sitting there weighing the question, are we going to be buying more of those big expensive cameras, or are we going to be buying more of these disposable cameras and the surrounding gear and training that will really move our organization to look more like that Mojo pyramid? We're still at early stages right now. Does anybody else know anybody who's doing mobile journalism well? Let's turn it around to the room. Got any examples? Who are you thinking of? Do you know anybody that's doing it well? Yeah, I think the wire services are really going to go strong in this direction. I can just sense that coming. Yeah, that these will now come over as packages to you, maybe. But again, the challenge is how do we reorganize around basically a whole new experience? It's mobile centric. Yes.
How do you see the whole mobile and content, adaptive content development in relation to the new wearables, you know, revolution and all that? How do you see traditional storytellers actually transferring their content onto these new devices?
Well, yeah, so the question is about wearables and content. You know, the New York Times just announced that they're going to be putting headlines out to the wrist. And I think, you know, when we think about at least the first generation of wearables, we know they're just an extension. They're a tether. They're a wireless tether, but they need the phone to work, yeah? So it's just a complement. So it's another screen that does something that doesn't require you, or an interaction that doesn't require your phone. Okay. They just got that bad guy. Okay, I got that. If I want more, I can get more. In terms of news gathering, I don't know if it changes anything. I can't see how it would help yet. But I'm sure there are some clever developers out there that I could use maybe my smartphone to start and stop recorder, so I could use it as a remote control, or maybe I could use it as a remote mic or something like that. I can see things like that being kind of useful for field production. I don't have any other ideas yet.
Yeah. I know the Guardian are currently working on something like that, but because no one knows how and whether these wearables are going to take off. You know.
I think Apple's already, sold 1 million? Pre-sold 1 million. Yeah. I think they are going to take off. There are already 1 million unhappy people because the shipping date slipped, right, for the Apple Watch. So I don't know. They sold 700 million iPhones. I think they must know something. It's going to happen. I just don't know how it's going to affect news consumption. I think that's why we have to be really, I mean, that's micro mobile. If we think this is mobile, you know, mobile 3 years ago is the laptop. Yeah, it's a whole new environment, so it's going to challenge us. Yes?
I got some practical questions. The first one is, how do you split the screen? The second one is, how do you build the layout of the horizontal periscope? And the third one is, if those apps like Cirque and Zeit are embeddable, yes or not, or only the preview?
Okay. Let's start with the Zeit question. I don't know that it's embeddable. You can watch a Zeit story on a laptop, online, and then you have the option then to open it within the app. How do I divide the screen? I showed you in my studio, I just used an iPad as a framing, as a window. Yeah, it's a physical frame. If you have more resources, you can come up with a better rig. You can come up with other ways to do it as a permanent setup. And if you want to do it, you're going to need maybe more of a custom solution if you want to feed video in to 2 separate screens. But I'm sure that's not that hard to do for somebody who has the broadcasting resources, or a video engineer, to do that. And then the other thing is, like, how did I do that mock-up, where I redesigned the interface? I used Photoshop, just like we always do when we're doing app development. We do wireframes. We sketch in Photoshop, and then we hand it over to a developer. It's like, this is how we want interactions to work.
You were also talking about Soros, but all of these apps for storytelling doesn't allow a complete embeddable code. So we have the need to find out where is an app which could be completely embedded into our website. And not only because we want to make traffic, of course, but also because it's not that good if we just show the preview and then we...
It's a common thing. Do we rely on that third party? Is the user experience good? Are the story cards good enough? You know, I would love to be able to embed that whole storehouse experience in my website. It doesn't exist right now. I think they're listening to publishers, maybe giving you white label versions that you can work with your development teams. And then it's the question, do we want to develop our own copycat or similar service in-house? How hard is that? What are the problems? And now you have to do all that research and development. So I think a lot of these things are going to go into the streams. Again, they're going to go where that mobile audience is, right? So it's brand magnification. It's enhancing your image. It's participating in the conversation where the audience already is. So being on Snapchat, being in Twitter, being, you know, on Facebook, and whatever else is happening, you know, being there on Instagram like the way the BBC News does. If everyone's seen the BBC's news facts, right? They're building story cards and they're putting them out in Instagram, in video and in still images. Now, video on Instagram is a 15-second story. So now, can you tell a story in 15 seconds? Well, you can give an update. You can give a brief. They do it in TV all the time, you know. 15 seconds is 40 words.
In every case, we must think about the vertical scroll of the photo galleries.
Yeah, you have to realize that's the default consumer experience, is that it's swipeable, it's shareable, it's streamable. And, you know, how do we worry about that vertical media experience? You had more than one question, though. That was great. Who else has a question? Yes?
Just in your opinion, which is the best editing tool if you ever use, or if you don't consider iMovie?
Well, okay, but that's the best. Now, if you're not on iOS, you can do it with YouTube Creator. So if Android, that's a way to do simple editing. But you can trim, and you can put things down on a timeline, you can put it right out to YouTube. Why not? Yes. Are we almost done? We are finished. I got 2 workshops on the following days. Thank you. Thank you. Built from the ground up on this idea of atomized content, visually led story cards, and subscriptions to stories so that readers can get updates. You can take that concept a little bit further or look at it a little bit differently when you look at the Zeit mobile storytelling app. This is, again, a consumer-focused app that you can seed with what you're interested in, and it will build a custom report for you every day, or every time you check it, it will go out and find interesting stuff. But this app gets smarter the more you use it. And that is a behavior, again, that should be a standard for any news organization going or saying they're going to be mobile first. Because that storytelling experience, that is an extremely satisfying user experience for consumers, because you get turned on to more interesting content. It already kind of knows what you like, but behind the scenes, it's seeing what stories you're reading, how much time you're spending on it, what sources are they, and it gives you more similar information. It's really using algorithms and machine learning to improve mobile storytelling. Everybody knows what this is? Do you have it on your phone? Do you have the Snapchat on your phone? If you did, do you know what that is? That's my QR code. All those dots, they're not random, they're unique to me. If you held up the Snapchat app and you touched the screen and pointed it at this, it would add me to your, yeah? Did you know that? That's a cool little hack. So we're seeing some of these older technologies come to us in new and different ways. QR codes are 10 years old, they're really popular in Asia. They didn't take on very, in many other parts of the world, but they're coming back as a way to connect users to each other and to their mobile stories that they're making in Snapchat. Now, I must admit, I'm always lost in the Snapchat user experience. I mean, I think it's designed by kids for kids to keep parents away, you know? It's really confusing, and it works brilliantly at that. But I do know that if you swipe right, you can get to content. This is new, came out this year. Partnerships. Because the audience is so huge on Snapchat, because it's the one that brands want to be in front of, all of these publishers ran into this to put their content where the audience is gathering. And that's just the way it works on mobile. You can't necessarily attract an audience to your content. You kind of have to put your content where the audience is. So mobile platforms are super important for storytelling. And if you look at how those news brands are promoting their content to millennials, using a vertical display of information, CNN probably does it the best because they actually understand the language of mobile storytelling, they actually understand art direction, and created a design language for their stories that they're promoting on Snapchat. If you go and look at, I'm just going to back up, if you look at some of the other ones, they're not so good at it. Vice News sucks on this platform, in my opinion, because they're using full screen vomit-inducing video. Okay, maybe that works for their audience, but it doesn't work. It doesn't attract me. So their short promos are all full screen video, and it's really unwatchable. Of course, when you click on any story, it's going to prompt you to turn the device and watch a video horizontally, as you should. But CNN tries to make any motion or animation in their vertical presentation of news very small, so it's not full screen, and so it's a pleasant experience. Seeds of this new language that kind of build our visual grammar, our storytelling grammar, set some of the rules. We now see that concept taking hold in the mobile storytelling experience with things like Google Now. Now, whenever you search on Google on your phone, you're going to get relevant contextual information, like maybe the weather in Berlin or that flight you're taking, show up in story cards. Just the information you need at the moment you need it, served up in a very comprehensive snapshot or a snack. So it's an information snack, a news snack. So these story cards are really the core ingredients, the core nouns and verbs that we use in mobile storytelling. And oftentimes, because phones have gotten bigger, the displays have gotten larger, the natural default is to hold the screen vertically. That's challenging our presentation. It's challenging the way we're doing video. But again, it also allows for story cards to flow in streams, So what are some of the elements of this language? Stories have to be swipeable, shareable, streamable, and this is really important, very visually led. Because we are now serving stories to audiences in a world, an ocean of small screens, visual storytelling is particularly effective and particularly important to grow your literacy for. Small example of this, has anybody used the Circa app or know what Circa is? Okay, a few hands there. So a story broke in Washington. A drone landed at the White House grounds. Scared everyone, right? Especially the session ran over a little bit. And I'm Rob Montgomery, the founder of the Smart Film School. And in this session, I'm going to probably go into professor mode because they gave me 60 minutes. Sometimes I only get 10 minutes to talk about this, and I can only talk about perhaps one aspect of what is really a new language. And today I'm excited because I can talk about a little bit more about how mobile storytelling is challenging us as storytellers and journalists. So, I like to move around. If I make anyone nervous or if I'm talking too fast, you can give me a signal like this. Slow down. If I'm talking too slow, you can give me a signal, okay? These are like television cues from broadcast. Okay, so I said mobile storytelling is a new language. Maybe I'll just talk here. It's probably going to pick up my voice a little better. Okay, so that's over there now, Leo. Thank you very much. Let's just look at something. If I'm any good at this, you won't be looking down at your screen. You won't be distracted by your phone. Your eyes are going to be glued to the screen over here because I like to think of myself as a pretty good visual storyteller. And when we think about storytelling, and particularly with mobile, what are the roots of some of this new language? Comes from seeds that have grown in the past. Seeds like the MSNBC spectral visual newsreader. Does anybody remember this project? It's been around for, gosh, almost 10 years. It's telling stories in cards, the concept of story cards. So that's one of the Secret Service. So how was that story served up using the Circa app? Well, through a series of cards. So through text, but each paragraph has to be, self-contained and work in a stream. It's told through photos and also graphics and also collections of sources and other information, other links, and a collection of quotes, sound bites. Those are very visually presented. So that's a great example of a recent story told, but that's often just not enough, because to really get that engagement, you want to invite your news consumer, your story consumer, to be able to subscribe to any new story cards that you add. On a developing story like this, they can stay with your story. They can get notifications. They're in charge of how they get the new story cards that are coming in that stream. So what we're seeing now with apps like Circa, really, why are they the only ones that are doing this? Really, this should be a feature for every news publisher, I would think right now, and every media house, that this novelty will wear off. This will become a new habit, a new standard. But it will challenge a lot of the technical ways that we organize stories, and it challenges our storytelling literacy as professional storytellers as well, because we have to write in story cards, we have to think visually, we have to consider the stream. And that's what it really means to be mobile first. When you look at Circa, the reason they're able to do what they're able to do is because they're not coming from a legacy media outlet. They're not a traditional broadcaster, they're not a newspaper that went online, tried to port their online content to mobile, whatever, just trying to put Band-Aids in responsive design. They're really just